I'm Maddie.
I'm Amber.
And we're Witches Talking Tarot.
We are the weirdos in this one.
Like a song, like a sailor snubble. Flip the switch and let the cauldron bubble. Sam.
Wow.
Hi everyone, I'm Maddie.
And I'm Amber.
And we're
Witches Talking Tarot.
And today we're going to be discussing something that has a lot to do with not just pop culture, but just like, I don't know. We're talking about ghosts.
Right, and ghost hunting has been going on for like a long time.
Oh, yeah. Like, I mean,
Now they've recorded on TV, but even like back when I would watch on TV, like there was ghost hunting. It's just, it was done differently than it is now. I don't watch it anymore.
and I'm just like, what counts as ghost hunting? Because you've always seen these people like go to castle. You know what I mean? See if you can see a ghost. Is that ghost hunting? I mean, they're going to go into a castle to see if they can see ghosts.
They're going into, in theory, capture evidence or an experience. And so I guess that would count as ghost hunting. I personally was just thinking about the professionals, quote unquote, that go into places or spaces that are thought or said to be haunted, and use whatever techniques that they believe in to try and prove whether or not that place.
Right, that was my initial thought too.
But I mean, when you say that, it's like they're trying to capture an experience and nothing else. Maybe
So-
they're also trying to capture evidence. That would count.
If we have any ghost hunters that listen to our podcast, which is highly probable, I'd say,
I have some proof.
what classifies a professional ghost hunter? Are you a professional ghost hunter when somebody hires you to go to a location?
Yeah.
Or do
Personally,
you,
I use the quotations because I don't necessarily, I just mean like,
well,
I was thinking about it from that level of people that.
that say they are professional ghost
Right.
hunters, which is why I'm like, what classifies a professional? Because it's not like saying you're a professional chef and you work in like a bakery or you
I
work
mean-
in this and that, you know what I mean? So is it,
You say chef, and like to me, like there's you know, a doctor needs a specific training, right?
Right.
And a chef is supposed to have specific training. Somebody can say, I'm a professional chef without having a holiday.
which is why
You know, they're not technically a chef, but they are embodying that. So would they be a chef? You know what I mean? I don't know. So like,
is
if
professional
you're going out actively ghost hunting, does that make you a professional ghost hunter?
today, Amber, you have got a lot of words for Witchy Wednesday. Because, like, seriously, I think.
Well, I've already used it both for the
Oh,
husband, so, yeah.
Well, the Jackson is like, and also what the fuck that like constitutes a professional? Because now I'm like, you know, because there are professional tarot readers. The reason why I would use the term professional tarot reader for myself is simply because I've been hired and paid to do so. Just like some people are professional singers because they have been paid to sing, you know.
And without looking it up, I would venture that two of the definitions for the word professional are somebody who makes a profession out of a thing,
Mhm.
right? So you get paid to,
Right.
but the other would be based on experience or action, right? You're a professional ghost hunter if you've been out there doing it and you have all this experience built up,
Right.
this knowledge that you're putting into practice without knowing, I would guess that those are two definite definitions for professional. Actually, I mean, I know the first thing, definition for professional. I'd imagine the being based off of experience and through action. What was probably also a definition for professional. And those two things are definitely what I would use with the finger quotes, say professional ghost hunter. I just never thought about it from a kid perspective, but I mean, just like in I wouldn't call it it's got a little spiky, little rascals, and they go into the haunted house to see if they
So,
can find them.
I would mention that ghost hunting,
Ghost hunting,
Right.
They're not professional ghost hunters.
right, exactly. So there's two groups, local groups everywhere that call themselves ghost hunters. They're not professional ghost hunters. There's amateur ghost hunters. Again, I'm not entirely sure what makes the difference. If
Well,
you're
I think it would be like the experience, money. That's probably the differences between professional and amateur, right? Because when you're an amateur, you're just getting started out. You're not being paid on any level.
Right.
You know?
So there are plenty of amateur ghost hunting groups all over the country. Everywhere. But like I want to start with talking about being respectful. The problem is with some of these groups is they look at it through maybe this is me being shitty because as I'm starting to say it, I'm like, oh, I can't tell somebody how to look at something. But if you're looking at ghost hunting through a strictly scientific lens, well, then you lack that respect. I think not all the time.
I was gonna say, and I don't think that the scientific lens makes them less respectful. Like actual, most of the ghost hunting I've ever watched involves the scientific aspect.
Yes.
And we prove that there are these things happening.
Right.
Or is it in people's heads? And generally speaking, in what I have watched, and it was like on like Discovery Channel back when they were cool to watch.
Yeah.
I am not a big fan of Discovery Channel anymore. But back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, I watched a lot of ghost hunting stuff. And they weren't like, they wouldn't traipse through places. They weren't rude about it. They weren't loud or really noisy. They would say like, you know, if you're present, let us know, or they might talk
Maybe
about
it's more of a personal thing. I mean, I'm sure it is a personal thing when it comes to the ghost hunters, because like there are some that are extremely disrespectful, completely disregard, you know, like traipsing over graves. That's just
Well, and so like what I found to be, and because I tried to watch some of like the newer era ghost hunting stuff for this episode. And there was the one show with the guy Zach Baggins, and then there's another show. It's got a very similar name, it's like Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventurers or something like
ghost
that.
hunters is a lot more respectful than ghost hunters, in my personal opinion.
Well, and one thing I noticed was they were all, and has nothing to do with Christian people, but they all presented from what seemed to be a Christian mindset and referred to all the hauntings as these are demons, these are bad spirits, these are bad. Like they viewed the spirits in a negative light because the spirits were haunting the place, and it seemed like that made them very disrespectful because they were like, "This is a bad guy, so we're going to be rude to him." Like that was the vibe that I got in watching the
Ghost adventures, yeah.
Yes. Now the Ghost Hunters wasn't as bad, but again, they were less respectful than what I had previously viewed. And again, they were talking about it in these terms of it's a bad spirit, it's an evil spirit, it's a this, that, and the other. And then they were like banging on stuff and just kind of traipsing through and just being really. They were trying to get a reaction.
Well, and I think that's the thing, like with a lot of ghost hunters, is the whole point is to try and capture something. So they go out of their way to do something to get a reaction,
Right.
which you can do respectfully.
Right. Because the stuff I used to watch, they did do.
Right. Whereas that Baggins is like, you want to play? Let's fight. That's not, that's shitty.
Like,
That's just-
But also, like, if you're in a space that's being haunted by a ghost, like, obviously the space is important to that spirit. And if you think that it's being haunted by a ghost, then in theory, that spirit needs to be human, right? You know? And like, I guess to me, and maybe like you said, it's a personal thing, because like, I would just think that if you're going into a space that you expect as a ghost, because the ghost is tied to it, you would go in without being aggressive. You would go in without being overtly annoying. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like, I feel like overtly annoying is a good way to put it. Because, like, I saw like people going in, like banging on stuff. Like, I get you're trying to get a reaction out of the ghost, but like, quite literally, you're trying to disturb the dead. You know what I mean?
That's yeah, and I feel like that's what they go in there with. That's their whole point, is they want to go out of their way to piss it off to get a reaction, when that's just unnecessary. But I feel like a lot of people think that anger is it's a very strong, whether you're dead or not.
Yeah.
And so a ghost so angry that they can drain some energy or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I understand I guess, theory
Why
behind
they're
it,
doing it.
why they're doing it, but you know what? I think that if they make somebody happy or welcome, they could get just as
Or just acknowledge it. Like the things I used to watch on Discovery Channel when I was like into that kind of show, because I liked it was like, a haunting and stuff like that. And you'd see like they bring a ghost hunter in. And the ghost hunter goes in with their like whatever thermograph and this, that's gonna record temperature changes and electrostatic in the air changes and all those kinds of, little tools that they have. They'd go into a room and they'd start talking about the spirit that haunts the room, and they both like everyone believes it's this person, and they talk about the person in their life to get a reaction. You know what I mean? And I think that's a very respectful way to try and get your most attention versus banging on the pipes or yelling, "I'm gonna fight you." I do this personally.
That's like,
But like, I didn't get through a whole Adventurers episode. I got slightly enraged and had to turn it
I don't know why this
off.
reminds
I'm not giving. You know what I mean?
No, I get you. I don't know why this reminded me of it, but I think this is one of the experiences that I've had in terms of like ghostly speaking to a ghost and it reacting. Was my door, my mentor had come over and she was visiting me, my door opened. And she looked at the door and she goes, "Close the door." And she went like this. And the door fucking closed. And I'm like, did she do? So the door closes. And, my whole point in that is she got a reaction about being disrespectful. As a matter of fact, she called the spirit out on being disrespectful. And I'm like, whatever. You know what I mean? I'll shut the door. However, I have had experiences where people have spoken to spirits very disrespectfully and have gotten very negative responses. I won't say the name, but this one guy pissed off a spirit, and the fucking ghost came behind him and yanked his cloak hood off, like literally yanked it off, and scared the fuck out of him. So, I guess what I'm getting at is ghosts are people too, or we're people too. Speaking about ghosts, not demons, ghosts were people too.
Yeah.
Just talk to them like a normal.
No,
And I
absolutely.
think they'd appreciate it.
Yeah, no, for real. Because like I truly think that is one of the biggest differences in respectful ghost hunting outside of just ghost hunting is acknowledging the fact that these spirits you're trying to connect with were once living, breathing human beings.
Yeah.
Instead of talking about them in like manners that dehumanize them, because if they are haunting place, most likely they are some kind of disquieted spirit and or don't know that they're dead. So for you to acknowledge them in such a disrespectful way would be like walking up to somebody at the counter of the grocery store and slapping them across the face and being like, "Are you real?"
Right? So well, the thing is, I grew up with a family of sensitives and people who could see and speak to spirits. And I was always told, literally, one of my earliest memories is if this thing is bothering you, just tell it to go away. You don't have to do, for the most part, speaking of a quote unquote normal haunting or normal ghostly activity, you don't have to go all elaborate and be hateful and be shitty. You can just say, "Hey, I don't really like that. It's bothering me. Can you please stop?" And I just imagine the spirit being like, "Oh shit, my bad." Right? Like, and that's not always the case, of course, but you'd be surprised how often that actually is the case. And it's the doing the other shit that's what pisses them off in the first place.
Well, and like, you say that, and I'm like, my mind's kind of like just going on a little train of thought. It's like, in a possible line of thinking, the spirit doesn't know that. They're just living their life. And here comes this noisy ass ghost hollering at them because we are the haunted of them.
Right.
And so they are just now being terrorized by this disembodied voice or by this spiritual like specter that's coming at them, and they don't even know why. And so, of course, like they're chucking a knife at it because they're in their kitchen. They think, you know what I mean? Like, just if you view it differently, you can be very respectful. But if you view it like it's an object versus a human being, it's very easy to be disrespectful right away.
And I think that's the problem with people in schools, but I don't want to go. That is exactly how, because anything that is not what we are, whether it's a spirit, whether it's an animal, whether it's a fucking whale, you know what I mean? Because it's not what we are, we assume that they don't feel, they don't have emotions. Or if they do feel and have emotions, well, then it's not, doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah, and that's one of the problem. Like current era viewpoints are very narcissistic. Everybody sees things through their own lens. Like that's how I would react, or they must have done this without looking at all the different ways that people are. You know, and they do it with other people, not just animals and things. But it's a very narcissistic viewpoint that most people have, where they look at everything through their very own lens, and they don't leave room for what's outside of their own personal bubble. And that's not just for ghosts, but it is for ghosts as well, you know, because like people go, they don't even look at the time frame that a ghost might have lived in.
no,
Right. They assume what that life must have been like.
and
without
that's the
any-
problem is the assumptions.
Yes.
That's with anything that is not human. And you know what? That even goes so far as to, and I'm about to jump off the deep end here. That goes so far as to include things like dragons and fae and Nessie and unicorn. Why the fuck do you think they're all
Yeah, like
like?
if you don't respect magic, it will disappear. Like if anybody who's seen The Last Unicorn, like that's kind of the plot at the very beginning, is that the magic has disappeared because people let go of it. People stopped seeing it. People killed it off.
You'll do that with ghosts. Like, I don't think people realize, like, you see these tours, and I've been on them, I've been on multiple, and I'm not like a super big fan of them because I feel like, well, you're just scaring the spirit off. Do you really expect to get, maybe not scaring it off, but definitely making it not want to interact with you?
Yeah.
Do you really think in a group of 25 plus people that you paid $25 plus to get into this tour, that you're going to get these reactions? You
I
know?
know. Like the only haunted tour I've ever been on was in Salem,
Mhm.
and it was supposed to be a ghost tour. And really, it wasn't a ghost tour at all. But there were two locations that definitely had spirits in them, and I could see one guy in a window, I could see two people in a window at another house.
Mhm.
But like the whole thing was like, oh, take pictures, let us know what's in your pictures. And it's like, they're not, they might let the people who know, like the people who are sensitive, they might let them in there.
Exactly.
But they're not just like, they're not going to be on parade for your sideshow. Like, especially if they know that they're a spirit. Like, they're not going to play your dog.
See, I live
Like,
in a,
and it's kind of offensive that we do that. Honestly, like I only went on that tour as part of the package. Like I thought about not going on the tour, but then I was like, I'm gonna look around Sam. I guess I am.
a very historical town, and we have historical tours, and some of those historical tours include historical ghost hunt or ghostly tours or whatever. I've lived in my town, I've lived in my town my whole fucking life. So obviously I've been on them. I know the lady you're talking about because she's the one that does the tour.
Yeah.
And one, like, well, I haven't been on them in years, but I liked when I went because it gives you an excuse to tour a very old Victorian home. multiple. And they take you in places you wouldn't normally go in the town.
Yeah.
Yeah, like underneath the square, all of the basements are like connected and like this literal underground restaurant, literally. Like, I mean, like, they're dark. You went to the underground basement in the at the one place. Did you go down there?
No.
It is.
I don't like underground.
Ooh, oh no, you don't. Literally held up by logs.
Yeah, no. See?
So I'm like, am I worried about the ghosts? No, I'm worried about the trees. Yeah, and they're like 1800s, still holding everything up. But it's interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I went on those tours. They were very interesting. I also learned some not so happy history about my town. But
I would totally stay in a haunted hotel. I'm not saying I would never like go to these places. There's something about the tours that it's like, if I was yeah, like if I was a ghost, I'd be so offended that you capitalized my life. Like,
right, like
you know,
yeah, I get
like you want me to do tricks for you now?
Yeah.
Like there's something about them that bothers me from that aspect. Not that people go on them necessarily. Like I don't judge people who do.
that.
What I mean is like there's just something about the ghost tours that like it really feels like, okay, do a trick now. You know what I mean? Like to the ghosts. And that just feels very disrespectful. You know, like I just because the one time I went in the cemetery with that group of our mutual friends, it was awful. Like they were walking on graves, they're running around, they're making jokes, they're being disrespectful, they're talking shit on people. We're in a cemetery. Like, are you trying to wake the dead, motherfuckers? Like, this is rude.
Right.
Rude. And like I could feel that like some things were unhappy. And
Just because you are alive does not mean that you're above.
right.
Like, I don't
We're
know.
all part of the same energetic field. You know what I
Thank
mean?
you for putting it into that like wording because I feel like some people would be listening and be like, these people are batshit crazy by saying we're not above spirit. And if that's the case, you're probably like
But yeah, not enough soapbox moments, apparently.
no. Is there anything else you can think to add to this episode?
I mean, it just kind of goes back to our first ghost episode where we said ghosts are people too, or ghosts were people.
All right. Well, let us know what you think in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can find us on Threads, Facebook, and Instagram at Witches Talking Tarot.
You can find us on the X at Classiest Witches because we are the classiest witches, you know. Big shout out to Death by DVD,
Melissa.
Victoria, and we appreciate y'all's support. And if you guys want to support us like they do, you can go to patreon.com/Witches Talking Tarot and become a patron yourself.
Thanks for staying with us, Risco.
Bye.